everybody, welcome to Emily Kate Made This. I am Emily Kate and I'm coming to you from Berlin in Germany. Welcome to my knitting podcast. It's mostly about knitting, often vintage knitting, sometimes sewing, sometimes other crafts, but mostly the knitting. I have no idea what episode we're on now. I've decided to just stop counting, but anyway. So this episode was supposed to be this grand reveal of something that I had rescued from the depths of sorrow, and unfortunately it's still there. The yarn is cursed. That's the only explanation I have for it. The yarn is cursed. Story time, everybody. I have been trying to make my husband a jumper for forever. Almost since I started knitting. So for coming up to 5 years. Yes, it'll be 5 years in January. So I've been trying to make him a jumper and failing, and if you've been here a while, you'll know I've made a skirt out of one of his failed jumpers, which I wear all through winter, so it kind of worked out well for me. And I made a different jumper, the Yggdrasil jumper, and that's now my oversized, almost dress-like jumper. And then I tried to make him a vintage jumper, and I thought I'll use my knitting machine and I'll make it like this fast and it'd be great. Well, I decided I'll use alpaca because alpaca is soft and it won't be scratchy and it'll be great, and I did not realize how different alpaca behaves, and it's so drapey. Like, I knew it was drapey, like I'd heard of this happening, but I'd only ever used alpaca in Drops Nord, and that wasn't drapey at all, so I figured Drops alpaca, it'll be the same. No. The wool and nylon in the Drops Nord definitely makes a difference. So I made this jumper and it grew so much. There was just so much fabric everywhere, and it's supposed to be a vintage structured jumper for a man. Then my gauge completely changed all the time, because if you measure it like here, it'll then drape, so then the stitch count was shorter and the row gauge was longer, and oh my, the mathematics I was trying to conquer to get this to fit wasn't happening. My worst issue was the sleeves. I was trying to get the sleeve heads into the arms, and I could not get the row gauge and to match the pattern because it was behaving so completely differently to everything else I've ever knitted with. And then he said, oh, I'll just have it as a vest. Problem is, I was trying to replicate the size and colour of a jumper that he loves to wear, but I ordered what was supposed to be more of an oatmeal colour, but it was really just beige that arrived, and if you've been here a while you'll know I don't like beige. It's not a comfortable colour in my spectrum, and I had to knit with beige it took me over a month until I gave up on trying to get this jumper to fit his body, and nothing about it was fitting. It was too big and too small simultaneously. The shoulders just did not fit in. Then I discovered an anatomy lesson. I kept calling it his biceps were too big, but it turns out his deltoids are too big. They're not too big, but hang on. They're not too big, obviously, he's a human and we're all different shapes and sizes, but the patterns don't really accommodate for the width of his arms, body. So it's been really difficult for me to get a jumper to fit him because he has like broad back, broad distance between the arm, the deltoid, there we go, and not a hump exactly, but like, it's hard to explain, but his neck kind of goes like this, and then his back I always imagine you can just rest a pint on the back of his neck. So getting fabric not to sit up here on his neck and down here on the back of him is really, really difficult, no matter how many short rows I add. And I thought a vintage pattern would be great because then I've got it in 2 separate pieces and I can make sure the back is higher than the front. But then to get the height to get to the back of his neck, like to actually sit up here, meant that the arm's eye hole was completely off for the sleeve. And then I couldn't get the sleeve head in, and it was driving me insane. And I can't give him a beige vest. He's not at the stage in life where he can wear a plain beige vest. He doesn't wear beige and he doesn't wear vests, and the two combined, it was no. He's not the kind of person that has a shirt with a vest on top. He wears t-shirts, he doesn't wear vintage clothes, so it would never have got worn. So I decided, okay, I can handle this. I will do something with this. I was very excited. I thought, okay, I'll make an oversized drop shoulder jumper for me. Then I can practice doing colour work on my knitting machine because I'd never done it before. If you watch my last episode, you'll know I have now done it. I made a batty headband because I was trying to make socks. There's a current theme in my knitting at the moment where I'm incredibly creatively explosive, but the results are haphazard and not going to plan. I'm hoping this is just a phase and eventually I'll collect myself together, and when I decide to make something, I'll make that and not something completely different as a result of trying not to waste the thing that I did. But at the moment, that's what's happening. So I will show you what I have done before I discuss why it's all wrong. This is the beige. I just dislike this colour immensely. When my mum visited and I was trying to get her help on how she thinks I should progress with the jumper for my husband, she just looked at the colour and was like, oh, it's so beige. So all of us are on the same, of the same opinion. So I used my knitting machine to do colour work, and the batty socks were the first attempt, and then after that I decided why not just go straight into a jumper. I'll tell you why not afterwards. So I love the colour work. I actually made up these charts. I didn't make up the charts, I took the charts from a chart book and made up the position and where to put them. And I love how this looks. But I don't love the beige. I think the beige looks terrible against my skin. And knitting colour work with alpaca on my machine was a nightmare. At some point, I will show you more in depth about how I'm doing the colour work on the machine, but it's such a faff trying to get my camera to focus on where I want it to be, and the light is here. So if I put the camera over here, you can't see anything, but I can't put the camera this side because there are 3 huge plants that block that. And I can't put it where you are now because then it would be right in the way of the machine. So I'm finding it very hard to actually get the camera to go into a position where you could see what I'm doing. But if I eventually manage, I will show you. and the short of it is, I like knitting colourwork by hand, but I wanted to just see how it would go. I can tell you it's not very fast to do it on the machine, and you can't see what you're doing, so you only see the back of your work. So it just looks like this. So you don't know if you have made any mistakes because you can't see it, and you're making, you use one of these. I don't think it's going to focus. It's basically a needle pusher, and you can push these into the chart that you want and push it onto the needles of the machine, and you hope you don't make a mistake across the 160 needles that you have. And you also, if you drop a stitch on the knitting machine, it doesn't just drop one stitch. It will drop that one stitch and the one below it, and usually one or two below that. Then you use a different hook and you ladder it back up on the purl side, which is not as easy as it is when you hand knit and you can do it on the knitting side. This way you have to lift all the stitches up and put them back on, which is very difficult if they're different colours, because you don't know which colour is meant to be where and you can't see it. So it was very interesting. It was quite stressful, and I had decided I would do that on like a much bigger, basically I decided I would do it to about here and on the back, because you have to knit them flat. As you can see, I gave up on that idea very quickly and just did it on the front. And this is where it started to go wrong, because I thought, this is great, it's looking marvellous, I'll make it a drop shoulder. I've never made a drop shoulder, but I like the look of them. And I calculated that this would be this would be deep enough. But what I didn't calculate was these sleeves I took off of my husband's jumper. And I thought I'll just take off the sleeve head and the top section of the arm so that they'll be the right length for me. But the stitch count is about 110 all the way around, and I just seamed that onto the jumper. But I didn't think about the fact that this wouldn't be 8 inches, whatever that is in centimetres. Oh, I am running out of space on my SD card. Okay, I will be back in a moment. Okay, footage deleted. Yes, I didn't think about how deep this would be after ripping it out. I just knew I'd made this correct. So when I seamed them on, first of all, I realised this is going to be too small. Second, the seaming looks horrendous, because if anything goes amiss on this alpaca, you will see it. Like here, where these stitches fell off of the machine. So I lifted them back on, put them on the machine and knitted, and it looks awful. Like, you can see it so clearly. And this is after blocking. I seamed, and it looks like I've never seamed in my life, and I hate it. And these are mistakes everywhere. Not like mistakes, but these are issues everywhere. Like, it's here, this is an end. So that was just one issue. The other issue is this oil mark that goes straight across the sleeve, because I oiled my machine and I hadn't actually considered the fact that old oil could come off, because it hasn't happened before. But of course it happened, and it happened on this beige. So there's this lovely oil mark that I can't get out. Then I decided, it's fine. I will just turn this into a really cozy dress. This idea was very romantic and lovely at the time, but I added it to the machine, and you can possibly tell where I rehung it on the machine. Yes. So I knitted this whole thing, and as I will probably repeat every time I talk about a knitting machine, yes, I am using a knitting machine, but it is an old one and it doesn't work the same as modern ones. So if you watch a YouTube on modern knitting machines, people thread it through a tension rod, it goes through the carriage, and they just do this, and you could knit like 100 rows, however fast you do this. This one, my machine, is done by hand, so you individually, like, you hold the wool and lay it over the needles, and then bring the carriage and you hook it under the side and then you move it. So of course it is much faster than knitting by hand, but it's not as fast as a modern machine. And I get really dizzy when I use my machine, so I can only use it for a maximum of an hour and then I can't do any more. I think it's a mixture of the vibration that goes through and also staring at this black, red, almost like keyboard style patterning and watching them move over and over again just makes your head go really weird. So it's faster than by hand, but I still have to do a lot of manual work, manual rehooking of yarn, and I can only do it for a small amount of time in a day. So it took me an hour to rehang all of these stitches onto the machine, and then it looks like this on both sides. Then I knitted just a straight tube and thought I'd do the split hem and it would look lovely and would be like, oh. No, I have never made anything so unflattering in my life. This is the worst looking garment I've ever made. It's like it takes your body proportions and then does creative things with them and pushes things in and pushes other things out, and I would never ever wear this. Even around the house, if I saw myself in a mirror wearing this, I would cry. Yes, it's very vain, I know. It's horrible. So, yeah. Oh, and the other thing was that I miscalculated the back piece, because when you do these, each one row is 3 rows. You move the carriage 3 times across to make 1 row of colour work. So your row count isn't correct exactly. So I hadn't thought this through. After I made the front panel and did this section, I then went to the back and realised I have no idea how many rows I need to do. And as I said before, the row gauge is really strange, so it moves constantly. So I guesstimated that it was about 11 rows in 1 inch, 2.5 centimetres. But I was off and I made the back too low. So I ended up going in and hand knitting short rows, which of course you can see because this alpaca shows everything. So it's really weird on the neck, it's really wide and doesn't sit very nicely. So what to do? I'm in 2 states of mind. Number 1, I hate this colour. So I actually just don't ever want to knit with this colour ever again. At least this alpaca, this exact one. Do I wear it as an undergarment for the winter? So I would wear it and the skirt part, the dress part, but put a skirt over top of it so you would never see the bottom, but it would keep me warm. And I could have the top part, and because these arms are so high up into my armpit, that another jumper should fit over top. So then it would be like a basically January, February dress that I wear under my clothes when I go out. Because it does get cold in Germany in the winter, usually. We've had -20, but generally it's probably around -5, -10. It changes every year, but it would be a good undergarment to put on when I leave the house and no one would ever see it. It does make me a bit sad that you would never see this, but the alternative is I get the scissors out, I turn this into like a cropped you can't see what I'm trying to do. I turn it into a cropped t-shirt. So I rip out these sleeves, undo the seaming, and just do like this, basically to make it kind of similar to this. Just do a rib around this section and make it a t-shirt. Thing is, I don't like this colour next to my skin particularly, so I don't know if it makes sense to make a t-shirt out of it, but equally I don't like the idea that I did all this and then it would be hidden underneath everything else. So I'm very and the skirt part, if I do cut it off, I thought I could turn it into a cushion cover. It would be cut off about here. Then I could just seam up the rest of it, and I did a folded hem so I could just put buttons on that perhaps, and yeah, turn it into a cushion, maybe embroider something on it. If you know me, you'll know I am like a dog with a bone and I get obsessed, and I don't like having something just sitting there in the naughty corner with no solution. There are so many things I want to be doing. I have a Christmas jumper plan, I have Christmas, like general festive things I want to make, but this has been in my life like 4 months now and it's still not sorted, and I just want it off any form of needle, out of any kind of bag. I don't want it lingering in my thoughts and my room. I want it out and having a purpose. So I'm going to ask what you think I should do. I can't guarantee that I won't already this evening have taken the scissors out, but just out of curiosity, what would you do? My voice is going again, shocking. I did consider what I can do with these sleeves, like if I felted them, or like what could I make with them? Basically, I don't want to re-knit anything with this. I will not be throwing it in the bin, so I have to do something with it. What would you do with these? Because I don't want to unravel them, because then I'd have to re-knit and I don't want to go near it. The only thing I'm willing to do knitting wise is to hand knit a bottom hem on this and the ribbing on this. That is all, because this ribbing alone for the neck, this took me 3 evenings to knit. It was on 2mm needles and there were hundreds of stitches and I hated every moment of it. So as I said, I'm an obsessive person and I want it done. I want something done with it. I can't just leave it in a bag and ignore it. It will ruin my life. Last night I finished this and I thought, I'm not going to think about it. Sit, not thinking about it. I'll do my Christmas stuff and not think about it. I dreamt the entire night about dismantling this stitch by stitch. I'd get up, wake up, go for a wee, come back, go to sleep, and go straight back into the same dream, dismantling it and pulling it apart. Oh, it drove me mad. So I have to sort this. What would you do? I don't even want to know how long I just spent talking about this, but this is basically consuming me. So you might have expected a Christmas jumper, but evidently I have been obsessing, so I don't have one. I'm in a bit of a mind pickle. I showed you some yarn that I wanted to make the festive, the Yule jumper. Now, originally I purchased the Tunt yarn for a different jumper. I wanted to make a Mount Pleasant with long sleeves. I'm slightly concerned about this concept now because it would essentially be the same idea of having to do drop sleeves, and I don't want that ugly seam around the arm, so I'm a bit nervous about that. If you have any tips on how not to make it that ugly, please do tell. But rewind. That was the yarn that I purchased to make that jumper. And every time I go to cast on the Christmas jumper with it, I think, but that's not the yarn I bought for it. And that's the yarn I want for this jumper. And the other thing is, I'm slightly concerned that it'll be too warm because it's Swedish wool, which is very toasty warm, which is great when you go outside, but at home around Christmas, when I'll be inside, like I would wear it at Christmas. I'm going to be warm, and I'm not sure if I would wear it because it's got long sleeves and Swedish wool. So I originally thought I'd make it like a t-shirt, but I'm not going to make a t-shirt using that wool. So that jumper hasn't been cast on because I'm a bit flustered on the decision. I actually have two 100 grams, 400 meters of a silk merino blend, and I wanted to use that originally for the t-shirt and use up my scraps of different superwash sock wools. And they're the perfect colours, they all looked beautiful, but then when I put them together, the sock hand-dyed scraps are really plump and nice, but the silk merino that I purchased like 4 years ago to make a shawl for my mum, I think, it's really thin and I don't think they're going to work together. And I should do some kind of little small swatch just to see what they look like knitted up together, but when I lay them flat next to each other, there's a significant difference, even though they're both 100 grams, 400 meters. So I'm not sure what to do because that was the plan and now it's failed, and I'm not 100% on using the wool that I really wanted to make something else with. So naturally, I decided to cast something else on. I'm going to be quite hush-hush about this one because I want you to see it when there's a colourwork section, and I want you to see the colourwork section before I tell you about it. But right now, it looks like this. But if I tell you what it is, you'll be like, what? And I can't show you a visual representation until I've made it. So you'll have to be patient. But this is hopefully going to be a Christmas jumper. I'm using, again, Swedish wool because, you know, I love Sweden and I love my Swedish Ulcentrum wools. This is a beautiful, beautiful green, and this white one. I think 2 years ago, yes, 2 years ago, I made a jumper. I just got really confused there because there's a square around my face on the screen and it threw me. I made a Christmas jumper by Skein, and that one I used the same wool. So I'm taking the stitch count of that and the same needles. So I'm looking at this thinking it's tiny, but assuming my gauge hasn't changed, it should be the right size. This is provisionally cast on because there's a really fancy ribbing and I want to make sure that the colour work is going to work before I spend all that time on the fancy ribbing. I'm kind of making it up, but I'm taking bits of different patterns to merge together. The problem is I haven't decided what to do on the top half of it. I only have three 300 meters 100 gram balls of the green, and I'm pretty sure that should give me a long sleeve jumper. And I know it kind of goes against what I just said about the t-shirt, but I don't want two jumpers for Christmas that are long sleeved. If I can have a t-shirt, preferably I'd have a cardigan, but that's for another year. This, I can't cope with doing all the colour work and adding a steek and trying to figure out even what shape cardigan jumper, what I'm doing. So I figured I'd just start easy and just make it in the round as is. I don't know what to make it into. I'm not sure if I'll make it like a vintage style t-shirt. I could do vintage like 1950s with drop shoulder. Again, I seem to be obsessed with drop shoulders, but I've never made one and I'm just trying to wing it and evidently that's not going well. Or perhaps I should make a raglan, or maybe a vintage 1940s style so I seam it and have poof sleeves. I'm undecided, but for now I've got a good wodge of colour work to do and ribbing before I even have to make that decision. So I really hope that next time I can show you some progress. Otherwise it's going to be a really boring video to be like, look, here's a thing that you can't know anything about. I just think it would be fun to see the visual rather than trying to explain it. Yes, basically that's all the knitting that's been going on. I've been obsessing and yeah, trying to do this. It's crazy. I really want to do festive knits. I really want to start them. I want to make them. I want to sit there knitting by hand, doing all the fun things, and instead I can't move on until I get this other thing out of my head, and it's sucking out all the time, as well as my new obsession. But I will talk about that a bit later. So, keeping on with the festive talk, if you watched my last episode, I showed you a couple of finds that I had in Sweden, and they are pattern books from the 50s, but I think one of them might be from 1945, because one has a date and one doesn't. When I flipped through the pages, it gave you examples of letters and numbers and styles of how to cross stitch and embroider, and it had 1945 on it. So it could be from the 40s. Anyway, one of them has a really, really adorable festive scene. And again, I won't tell you about it till I can show you, but it won't be very long, I hope. My mum gave me an early Christmas present of the West Yorkshire Spinners Vintage Sparkle. This one is the new one, I think, Yuletide. And it does indeed sparkle. I don't want to make socks, but then I do want to make socks, so I'm trying to Yes, can you tell my mind is just a creative jumble at the moment? I want to make something with them, with this, but I can't decide if I want to make socks with a colourwork chart or mittens, but equally I might be able to make matching because this yarn goes a really long way and I don't have very big feet. I mean, I have a size Europe 38, so they're not tiny, but you can make decent 2 pairs of socks out of that. So I think I want to make mittens and socks. Equally, I wouldn't be using all the wool for the sock because I have these sections with the heel and the toe and the colourwork, so I think I should get away with it. Problem is, I really like the Stone Knits Christmas like cocoa mug colourwork chart. I'll try and put a picture. I don't own it and I'm desperately trying not to buy more patterns because I have a bunch of her patterns and her book and I haven't made them all and I think about them all the time and I don't want to buy another one if I haven't done the others. But equally I really, really want to make that and put it with this. So that's one thought. Or to use the Swedish Christmas colourwork scene that I saw and put it into a pattern. So if I manage to move on from the dress, I want to make festive socks, festive slippers and my Christmas jumper. I would say that's all the knitting talk. I'm going to just do a little bit of life talk and then finish up because my throat is going a bit crazy. On the subject of my throat, I thought I would update you a little bit. I went to the doctor after 2 months of not being able to talk properly, and he told me it's all in my head and it's all psychological and he can't see a problem. So another interesting doctor visit, I get told everything's in my head. But I was certain that something in this apartment, something isn't combining well with me. And we bought a new Hoover because I thought it's got to be like dust or something in the apartment because it improved in Sweden. So I could start talking. Not excessively, but I could start talking there. And then when we came back, I couldn't again. So we got a new Hoover and my goodness me, it was very eye-opening. We Hoover regularly, but apparently not enough. So we've got a few rugs, and we hoovered them and oh my goodness, it filled the Hoover. We did one like Hoover session on the rug and it filled the Hoover, which was disgusting. And we hoovered that regularly. So evidently the old Hoover wasn't doing a very good job. And we were taking out the rugs and like smacking them against trees every few months to get dust out. But yeah, apparently not, didn't get it all out. And I hoovered every single day for, well, I'm still doing it, but I noticed that every day I started feeling a little bit better and I could sleep better without this horrible feeling at the back of my throat. And I was able to start talking at a low pitch and then a slightly more normal pitch. And every day we hoovered and filled the Hoover completely. So like we had to empty the little plastic rubbish bit every day. We even had to clean the Hoover twice because it filled the filters. And magically, after a week, I could talk again. And then I decided to wind the wool for my Christmas jumper, and immediately as I was winding around I thought, all the little fibres and all the dust was flying off. See if I can put a picture, because I did take one. And immediately my throat went back to being very unhappy. So I think I might be allergic to dust or just highly sensitive to it. So that is why I can talk again. Yay! It's not all in my head. But I do now have to wear a mask whenever I wind wool and have the window open. So that is the story of my voice. I've also not had as much knitting time because I've become quite obsessed with cleaning. I discovered this book, and I can't pronounce her surname actually, Nancy something. I'll put it here. I've always been into eco-friendly, like everything, and organic everything, and I've used organic cleaning products when I used to work in health food shops, and now I use like vinegar and yada yada yada. But she has a recipe for a bunch of different eco-friendly cleaning products, and I love making my own everything, whether it's bread or jumpers or socks or cleaning products. So I jumped right on there, and especially because of the whole Hoover dust drama, I'm now cleaning like everything. Everything is getting cleaned, and it's very therapeutic, but it does take a lot of my time at the moment because I'm obsessing about it. So I haven't been knitting as much because I've been cleaning. But I do hope that I can start balancing it out a little bit soon. And speaking of that, I should probably stop talking so I can balance out my talking versus quiet time, because I haven't really been talking that much, and now I'm like shouting with excitement into the camera. So I will wind that up for today. I know it was quite a long rambly one with lots of indecisions and no success stories, but next time, let me know what you would do in the comments about the dress and what you think I could do with the bottom half or with the sleeves. Just throw those ideas at me. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye! Hello, I forgot to tell you what I'm wearing. I made this in 2022. I used Onion Knits wool, can't remember. It's on my Ravelry, but it's like way down the page. It's a vintage pattern from the 50s, I believe. Designs or Knits by Kay. The actual pattern has a really unfortunate brand name that I won't say because it's quite racist. I did once say it and got very upset people telling me I should never have said this, so I won't say it. But the company doesn't exist anymore, and I don't know how you could get the pattern, but this is what I'm wearing.